friends, Mrs. Taima here. Good morning. Welcome to day 16 of Module 2 from Wit and Wisdom. Myself and Miss Spears will be reviewing main topic and key details with you today with the book that you read with Mrs. Smith yesterday called Seahorse, the Shyest Fish in the Sea. You do not have a copy of this book, of the Seahorse book. But that's okay because there is a PDF version, linked on the first slide of our lesson. You are going to use boxes and buttons to review key details and main topic with Miss Spears. If you still have your pieces of paper from your that you cut out from your handout last week, you can use those. Or if you have something different like a jar and some pennies, for example, you can go ahead and get those ready as well. You will be practicing with your learning partner at home, and then in part 2, you will practice writing some key details from a section of the text. So make sure you have all of your materials ready, and then I will see you back for part 2 in just a little bit.
Hello, first grade friends, and welcome back to Wit and Wisdom in Sync. My name is Tanisha Spears, and I'm excited to jump into our lesson. But before we do, let's make sure you have your materials ready. For this lesson, you will need handout 11A, which is the buttons and boxes handout. You'll need your Wit and Wisdom in Sync journal and a pencil. And don't worry if you don't have handout 11A. You could just use a cup or a jar and some coins or crumpled up pieces of paper. Pause the video now if you need to gather your materials. In previous work, you had an opportunity to make observations on what you notice and wonder about the text, Seahorse, the shyest fish in the sea. And you started thinking about selecting details in informative writing. Today, you will continue thinking about how to select important details for informative paragraphs. We'll also continue working with the Seahorse text and thinking about key details in the text. But before we do, let's take a moment to think about the title of the text. The title of the book is Seahorse, the Shyest Fish in the Sea. When people are shy, it means they are uncomfortable with strangers or easily scared. The EST at the end of shyest means most. So shyest means the most shy. Do you remember any times when the seahorse acted shy? I'll ask it one more time. Do you remember any times when the seahorse acted shy? Maybe you thought about how the seahorse stayed still when another fish came near it. And remember, the seahorse stayed still and avoided the other fish because it didn't want to get eaten. Now, let's think about the question that will frame our learning for today. And that question is, what is happening in this text? So specifically, we'll be thinking about what is happening in Seahorse, the shyest fish in the sea. And as you examine what is happening in the book, you will find clues about what the book is mostly about. I want you to think back to the text, Me, Jane. How did we identify the key details and main topic of sections of Me, Jane? Think about that one more time. How did we identify the key details and main topic of sections of Me, Jane? Tell your learning partner. You may have guessed it. We used a routine called boxes and buttons to help us determine what each section was about. And now you will look at the text, Seahorse, the shyest fish in the sea, in a similar way. Now I have a challenge. I want you to point to the picture gently on the screen that represents the small details. Now, point to the picture that represents the main topic or what the text is mostly about. I'm sure you got them right. The button represents the small details and the box represents the main topic or what the text is mostly about. Now, we're going to read a few excerpts or small parts of the text, and then we'll figure out the details and the main topic in those sections. Are you ready? Let's get started. Okay, I am going to be reading an excerpt. That means only some of the words from page 10, and then we'll talk about the details and main topics of this section of text. Now, one of the materials I told you to get was handout 11A, buttons and boxes. Now, you may be just like me and you're at home, so you don't have those materials accessible. So you could have also gotten a jar and some crumbled up pieces of paper or some pennies if you had them to represent the buttons and the box. Okay, now as I am reading the excerpt from page 10, you should be listening carefully for key details because those are the buttons, the small pieces of information that we're learning about on those pages. Once we've identified the details, then we can think about what all those details have in common. That will help us figure out the main topic of the section. I want you to remember as I am reading that a snapper is a type of fish. Are you ready? Listen carefully. If a hungry snapper cruises by, seahorse holds still and changes color. Now, I don't know about you, but I heard details about how a hungry fish was swimming near the seahorse, but the seahorse stayed still and changed color. All of those details describe how the seahorse stays safe and how the seahorse can hide from predators or other animals that want to eat them. So now I can close my box. And now I'm going to add that information to our main topics chart. Here is the main topic for the first section I read. Seahorses use their bodies to stay safe. Now, let's read another section. And as I read, you should be listening for details. And if you have buttons or handout 11A, you can touch a button each time you hear a detail. And if you don't have buttons or pennies or crumpled pieces of paper in a jar, that's okay. The important thing is that you are listening for details. Let's get back into the text. I am going to read excerpts from pages 20 through 24. Listen carefully. Her eyes move separately from each other. One can peer up while the other looks down, so she can spot food coming from any direction. To drop lower in the water, seahorses tuck in their necks and roll up their tails. To rise higher, they uncurl themselves till they are almost as straight as pencils. Seahorses have prehensile tails, which means they can grasp things tightly with them. One detail I heard was that seahorses can move their eyes all around to help them look for food. What are some details that you heard? Share with your learning partner. Now think, what do these details tell us about seahorses? Or in other words, based on all the details that you heard, what's the main topic of this section of text? Share with your learning partner. Now what I'd like you to do is